If I had full control over the UFC, no, scratch that. If I had full control of the entire universe and I could make the planets align to create 5 of the biggest fights you could ever make in the UFC moving forward, I would choose these 5 fights. This is my list of top 5 fights that the UFC could ever make in the near future. Khabib versus Ferguson is not on this list. That is too obvious. These ones need some little bits of manipulation. They need some pieces to move into place to give us the biggest box office fights the world could ever ask for. And I'm going to start with this one, the fight number 5 on my list. Weili Zhang versus Valentina Shevchenko. This is the fight to give some respect to the women's divisions of MMA, because for a while, until Zhang versus Joanna and Jacek, the women's divisions have kind of been slept on. Valentina Shevchenko keeps taking on can after fucking can. I can't watch it anymore. Okay? She keeps destroying these sacrificial lambs, and it's just going to be the same thing for her next opponent, Joanne Calderwood, in Australia. Why are you fighting Joanne Calderwood in Australia? Okay, another can to be crushed by Valentina Shevchenko, and these aren't even cans. They're great fighters, don't get me wrong, but the skill difference, unless it's Joanna or Weili Zhang, or maybe Rose Namajunas at strawweight, there's no one else. Maybe Tatiana Suarez, but there's no depth. It's a very difficult situation that these women's divisions are in, because the champion is normally dominant for so long that people just start to lose interest. So the perfect thing to do, after a very long amount of time, if I could have anything happen that I want, I would have Weili Zhang defend her title one more time. I would have Valentina Shevchenko successfully defend her title against Joanne Calderwood. And then I would have Weili Zhang versus Valentina Shevchenko for a super fight, both belts, the 135 belt on the 125 belt on the line, the flyweight world championship, Shevchenko's title, because we know for damn sure that Shevchenko is not cutting her way down to 125. She used to be a fucking bantamweight, for Christ's sakes. To be honest, she could probably make 125. Joanna was looking pretty big in their fight. Either way, Weili Zhang versus Valentina Shevchenko, in my opinion, is the biggest fight you could ever make in the women's divisions of MMA right now. But let's stop talking about the fucking women's divisions and let's get to the real list, okay? Because now I've included the women. I know people would say otherwise. Weili Zhang versus Valentina Shevchenko, to me, is one of the only interesting women fights you could ever make in the future of MMA or the UFC. Valentina Shevchenko versus Weili Zhang. Moving on to number 4 on my list, and now things get very interesting. Here come the men. Here come the big boys. And this is number 4 on my list. Jon Jones versus Israel Adesanya. I know this fight has been teased, and I know that Adesanya doesn't want to fight Jon Jones yet, which kind of ruins it for me, because, you know, this is the UFC. It's starting to become a little bit like boxing. I mean, Israel Adesanya, I respect you as a champion, don't get me wrong, but, like, I'm going to fight you in 2021 is not the same as I'm fighting you fucking next. That doesn't get me the same level of hype. So that's why it's on number 4. This would normally be maybe number 1 if this was at a real potential of happening, because Adesanya doesn't seem like he wants it, and Jon Jones might even move up to heavyweight. So this is a very unlikely fight to happen. Jones could move up, Adesanya could move up. We could be playing duck, duck, goose with Adesanya versus Jones. And I'll be honest with you guys, both of their star powers recently have somewhat dwindled. Jon Jones basically lost to Dominic Reyes. Split decision against a one-legged Thiago Santos. Lackluster performances throughout. His star level for Jon Jones is going down and down and down, which is why this number 4 on my list is Adesanya versus Jones, and not to mention Adesanya versus Romero. Adesanya's star level. Oh, dangerous. It's starting to rock a little bit, you know, so I think we need to make this fight sooner than later before one of these two gentlemen destroy their entire careers themselves. Okay? Adesanya versus Jones is number 4 on my list. It's an amazing fight to make. They're both 6'4", and before someone tells me Adesanya is too small, he's 6'4", he's a huge middleweight. You saw him fight Yoel Romero. I'm sick of people saying that Adesanya doesn't cut any weight. He cuts a shit ton of weight because he's a giant man, and we saw that in Embedded. People were saying that Adesanya cuts 0 weight, and that he walks around at 168 pounds. That is not true. I don't know why the MMA media have been saying this. We've literally seen him cutting weight in a bath and draining his face every single weigh-ins. Either way, I think they're just trying to protect him from Jon Jones by saying, oh no, he's too small for Jon Jones. It's not his fault he doesn't want to go up. Either way, Adesanya versus Jon Jones is the next biggest fight on my list. This is the fight I want to see eventually in the UFC, because this is the biggest fight you could make between the middleweight and light heavyweight divisions. Listen. There's been super fights in many divisions. We've had DC go from light heavyweight to heavyweight. You know? We've had Conor McGregor go from featherweight to lightweight, to welterweight even. You know, we've had TJ Dillashaw go down to 125 from 135. We've had this mix-up. We've had Henry Cejudo move up from 125 to 135 to fight Marlon Moraes. We've had this creativity in these divisions where there isn't as big of a weight gap, but between middleweight and light heavyweight, that's a 20-pound difference in weight. If someone could pull that off, they would be the pound-for-pound best, especially if they pull it off against Jon Jones, which, judging from his recent fights, is looking less and less likely because people seem to be getting the hang of Jon Jones, including Dominic Reyes, who I thought won the fucking fight clearly 3 rounds to 2. Either way, let's not dwindle on robberies. That's the fight I want to see. Adesanya versus Jon Jones is number 4 on my list. That's the super fight we all want to see. Fuck all this playing around. Listen, Adesanya, get past Paulo Costa, and if there's no other clear contender, like let's say Whittaker beats Darren Till, hey, listen, time to go up to fight Jon Jones. I'm not waiting until 2021 if you're able and ready by August. Let's get in there. You know what I'm saying? Jon Jones versus Adesanya, because right now Jon Jones is getting worse and worse by the looks of things. And I want to see this fight with Jon Jones as close to his prime as he fucking could be. Because let's be real, he might be a long way from his fucking prime. Like and... Oh, I'm not done with the video yet. Number 3. I was about to say like and subscribe. Do that anyway. Number 3. On my list of top 5 fights I could ever make in all time in the future of UFC is Jorge Masvidal versus Colby Covington. And the reason this is above Adesanya versus Jones, you may be calling me crazy. The anticipation for Adesanya versus Jones would be big. Don't get me wrong. But can you fucking imagine the build-up to Covington versus Masvidal? That shit would be nuts. You've got the entire storyline. They used to share a fucking apartment. They've had sex with the same women at the same time. They've shared a bed. Like, Colby Covington used to sleep on his sofa. We've seen all of these videos, and it's not like they're going to have to fabricate some kind of storyline where they go back in time and say, you know, he used to live with me. We've got the footage. We've got all the promo we need. If you don't remember, there's a company called Genghis Khan Films, a production company that went to Jorge Masvidal, and they've got so much footage of him and Colby Covington being the best of friends, and it switches like that. As soon as they become competition, these two guys don't fucking like each other anymore. Okay? And whether it be fabricated or whether it be real, I don't give a fuck. We're going to sell it as being real, because that's the best fight I could look for that doesn't have a title on the line. I could watch that fight if they're number 10 and number 15. I don't give a fuck. That's why it's number 3 on my list, because Jones versus Adesanya doesn't have the same ring to it if neither of them have a belt. You know? But Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal, I'll watch that shit on Cage Warriors. They can have that on the prelims of Cage Warriors. I'm tuning in to watch that. I need to see that fight and the build-up for it. I mean, Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal. You're talking about the press conferences, the shit they would have on each other. If any of them have ever sniffed a steroid in their life, the only way... And here's the weird thing about this. When you have two guys that have lived with each other, have fucking breathed the same air for about 10 fucking years, have trained together every single day of their life before, not too long ago when they split up and had a bit of a fallout, they have, if you've ever taken a steroid, they know. You know? They know that shit. If you've ever cheated once, they know. If you ever skipped practice, they know. If you ever done anything or had a mum call you or had some kind of family situation where you fucked up or you've done something illegal that you shouldn't have done, they know. He's your best friend. He knows everything about you. If you're best friend and you split up, that's the most dangerous situation to be in. Okay? And it's kind of like a checkmate. And I feel like at the press conference there's going to be some kind of energy if they do potentially make this fight. And if they would make this fight, I would rather it Jorge Masvidal beat Usman and Colby Covington beat Tyron Woodley, and then we have the Masvidal versus Covington fight. That would be the biggest fight of all time at welterweight. I'm not even joking. I know GSP was around. Covington versus Masvidal would be the biggest fight of all time at welterweight, other than maybe one more fight on this list, which we'll get to later on in the video. It's number 1. And it's a big one as well. But Colby Covington versus Jorge Masvidal, listen, the only way they won't say if they've taken steroids or anything is either neither of them have or both of them have. Okay? So if one of them starts calling the other person out for taking steroids, you can bet your you can bet anything you want that guy actually has taken steroids. If Masvidal comes out there and says Colby's on all the shit, if Colby comes out there and says Masvidal used to take this and that, 100% they're telling the truth. Because if they had done it also, they would not be calling out their best friend, because their best friend would point right back and say, no, you've done it as well. I love it. I love the whole situation. We've never had this before. I know we've had some situations where guys that, and this kind of gets overplayed, people like, oh, these two friends fight each other. Listen, they're not friends, and we've seen this throughout UFC history. I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but there's been situations where friends have fought, but they're not really friends. They were training partners for a little bit. I guess Chuck Liddell, Tito Ortiz would be a good situation, Rashad Evans and Jon Jones, but they were just training partners. This is best friend shit. Colby Covington and Jorge Masvidal have sat up at midnight watching films together, eating ice cream on the sofa, playing Call of Duty together. Like, that's just the level that it is. They're best friends. They always have been. Until now. This is different from Rashad versus Jones. This is different than anything you've ever seen where two training partners or two friends in the MMA world have fought each other. This is Covington versus Masvidal. I want to see that shit right now. Moving on to number 2 on my list. And it will be Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou, champion versus champion. This is only bigger than Masvidal versus Covington, because this will be for the heavyweight championship of the world. If, and again if, this is the big thing about me having to align the planets and have my own way. If Ngannou can get to the heavyweight belt and Jones can keep his light heavyweight belt long enough, Jones versus Ngannou is the biggest possible heavyweight fight Jones could ever take. If Jones fights Stipe Miocic at heavyweight, it does less numbers than if Jones fights Ngannou. You know? Ngannou needs to get the heavyweight belt because that's the biggest possible fight ever. If DC gets the heavyweight belt, we know he's retiring. He said he's retiring. The UFC is even giving him his last fight on his contract. After that, it's over unless DC wants to continue for another 5 or 6 fights, or just sign a 5-6 fight contract and never be able to fight in another promotion again because you're going to retire before your contract's over. That's the situation DC's in right now. I want Ngannou to get the heavyweight belt. I want Jones to keep the light heavyweight belt. And I want for finally, in a fucking 10 years that I've watched Jon Jones fight, he has been saying for so long. He's been saying for so long, fan demand will decide if I move up to heavyweight. I don't know how much louder we have to be, Jon Jones. We've been asking for you to move up to heavyweight for the past fucking 10 years. We're bored of you beating up on smaller guys. And the only time you fight guys your size, it gets rough. It gets rough. I want to see Jones at heavyweight. What's all this? Oh, if the fan demand is big enough. It's been big enough for 10 fucking years, Jones. Get your ass up to heavyweight. What are you avoiding? Come get your big paychecks. It's big game hunting out here. I know Ngannou looks terrifying, and I honestly feel that that's why this would be a great fight. Jones can sell his immunity and his invincibility at light heavyweight. He can say, I'm better than all of these guys. I've beaten everyone. I have better resumes than all of them. I have better records than all of them. I've won against better opponents than all of those guys have. He can say that he's the best light heavyweight in the world. And when he does do that, it kind of kills the hype for the fight. Because it's like, okay, cool. You've got a very good point, and why are we watching this bullshit fight? Then maybe the fight turns out to be amazing and shockingly close, but Jones kind of kills his own hype because we know he's better than everyone else until he steps in the cage. But in the build-up, when he's trying to sell the fight, we know. But in heavyweight division, shit, I don't know if Jones is better than Ngannou. Technically, maybe, but you know, Ngannou's got that one-hitter quitter. I don't know. Before every other Jones fight, Jones is a heavy favourite. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw Jones as an underdog versus Ngannou. I'm serious. If Dominic Reyes can catch you with rear uppercuts when you have a 20 centimetre reach advantage over him, Jon Jones, which is about 8 inches, by the way, then Ngannou's going to catch you, man. And when Ngannou catches you, you die. Okay? Jon Jones versus Francis Ngannou would be the biggest fight you can make at the heavier weight classes. Light heavyweight versus heavyweight. Super fight. Look how big DC versus Stipe was. Now we've got a whole fucking trilogy of it. That's how big it was. Imagine how big the guys that beat both of them could be if Ngannou beats Stipe and gets the heavyweight belt back. That's what I want to fucking see. Yeah. Jones versus Ngannou. Moving on to number 1 on my list. And I said this earlier. It's in the welterweight division. Can you guess what it is? Because it's one of the biggest fights you can ever make in UFC fucking history. And you may be able to guess. I might even put it in the thumbnail and ruin the entire point of the suspense. But either way, Conor McGregor versus Jorge Masvidal for the 170-pound title. If Conor McGregor were to somehow reclaim his 155-pound belt, is the biggest, and also if Masvidal is to beat Kamaru Usman, that's another big if, could be the biggest fight in UFC fucking history. And guess why? Because this is going to happen down the line in their careers. So we can build up to this. Think of the stars they are now. And to be honest with you, Conor McGregor, maybe the least relevant he's ever been. When he gets back into the title mix, he's going to be the biggest he's ever been. But right now, with no belt on the line, you saw it, it's a little bit less. Just a little bit less, you know, like when the title's on the line with McGregor, McGregor's good enough to sell on his own, but when the title's on the line and being the best in the world is on the line, it just adds a little bit of boost of hype, you know? So the Cerrone versus McGregor fight won't be as hype. The McGregor versus Gaethje fight won't be as hyped. It'll be a big fight, don't get me wrong, but when he gets his belt back, that's when we're talking we're gonna break every record in UFC history. We are. That will be, I guarantee you, if McGregor gets the 155 belt back, if the planets align, okay, and we all cross our fucking fingers in unison around the entire world, in unison, we all cross our fingers around the entire world, and we can maybe see Usman lose to Masvidal. Please God, can we get Usman out of the fucking equation? He kills off any chance of a super fight. Either way, if Masvidal could beat Usman, and McGregor could get the 155-pound title back, whoever it is against, if it's Tony Ferguson, if it's Khabib, if it's Tony Ferguson, listen, Conor's got a chance there. If it's a Khabib, he's got a bit less of a chance, but still got a chance. Let's not be weird here. Conor McGregor, at 155 with the belt around his fucking shoulder, he was the 145-pound champion. He now has the chance to make history again, to be the first free weight world champion in the UFC of all time. And do it simultaneously with lightweight to welterweight after doing it simultaneously from featherweight to lightweight. And Masvidal would take that fight 100%. You're talking about the biggest UFC fight of all fucking time. I'm not over-exaggerating. McGregor versus Masvidal would be the biggest fight of all time. If he has the 155-pound belt, and if Masvidal has the 170-pound belt, you're talking just... I'm seeing 3 million pay-per-view buys, and I'm not even over-exaggerating. And you're talking if Masvidal beats Usman, when McGregor beats Gaethje, both of their names will rise up again. Both of their hype levels would rise up again. All of their fame would rise up again, and we'd build towards this moment. And let's say McGregor then takes on the winner of Khabib versus Ferguson and wins, while Masvidal beats Colby Covington and gets all that hype and fame, and it's all building to this one big moment. 155, 170. Boom. It's over. We break the pay-per-view buying system, period, and no one can ever buy a pay-per-view ever again. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. That's my top 5 fights I could ever see in UFC history at any point moving forward. I know there were some, like Khabib versus GSP, some people would say, but I know that fight can't happen because Khabib refuses to move away from 155 pounds. You know? And there's certain ones I can't put on this list. But those are my biggest top 5. Goodbye. Thank you for watching. Click that button there. I will see you later.